Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are well. So missing you guys. We are going to study this morning from 1 Samuel chapter 25. And I've entitled this study, Abigail Amid Adversity. This is not a Bible study that I can tell you that I wanted to do. It's something that I struggle with, but it's something that God has laid on my heart. I'm not good at it. I don't communicate well in the middle of conflict, but it is something that I've studied over the last week or so and wanted to share with you. So I hope that it helps you as much as it's helped me to think about my responses when there is conflict and things that need to be addressed. So we are going to pick up in 1 Samuel 25, but I want to give you a little bit of background while you're finding that. At this point in King David's life, he has already killed Goliath. He has been anointed king by Samuel. He is being pursued by King Saul, who is currently king of Israel. He has opportunity to kill Saul in the cave and has chosen not to in obedience to God. And now he's still on the run. Hundreds of men with him, but still on the run. No place to really call his home. Very difficult time in David's life. And he has happened upon some shepherds that are servants of a man named Nabal. Nabal in 1 Samuel 25 verse 1 is described as a very rich man. 3,000 sheep, 1,000 goats, a business in Carmel. He is a guy who has definitely been blessed monetarily. However, in verse 3 of 1 Samuel 25, we see that he is also described as a very harsh man and evil. So these shepherds of Nabal are caring for his flock, and they have opportunity to be with David and his men, and David and his men serve them. They protect them. They help with the flocks and herds. They provide for them in meals. And so David and his men have asked of Nabal for a simple meal, and he refuses. He actually, in verses 10 and 11, pretends not to know who they are. Now, if you'll recall, David would have been well known in the kingdom and known that he is on the run from King Saul. But Nabal actually pretends not to know them and accuses them as possibly being servants that have run away from their owners. So being actually runaway slaves. So we take up from there to see how it is in the middle of all of this, Abigail's role becomes really, really important. So if you'll go with me to 1 Samuel chapter 25, we'll begin reading in verse 14. So remember, Nabal's already been confronted of being asked by David and his servants to, or the men with him, to have a meal provided for them out of the service that he had already given to Nabal's servants. Okay? So here we are in verse 14. But one of the young men, now this would have been a servant of Nabal's, one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, Behold, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, and he scorned them. Yet the men were very good to us, and we were not insulted, nor did we miss anything as long as we went about with them while we were in the fields. They were a wall to us by night and by day, all the time we were with them tending the sheep. Now therefore, know and consider what you should do, for evil is plotted against our master and against all his household. And he is such a worthless man that no one can speak to him. Now what's interesting is you have this servant not going to his master to tell about the plot, that David and his men are coming and it's not going to be good. He doesn't approach his master. He approaches Abigail, Nabal's wife. So the first thing we see with Abigail in the middle of adversity, she's approachable. It's interesting with little kids, you oftentimes will have them come to one parent or the other, knowing that one might be a little more approachable than the other in times of need. But we are like that as adults too. We know when we can go to someone and talk to them about a problem, and someone else that we shouldn't go to that maybe is not as approachable. Now I want to be careful here, because it's important when we're in the middle of conflict that we're not approachable because we will tell someone what they want to hear. It's important to always speak truth, but to also be approachable, that someone can come to us and speak directly about something that they see as wrong even in our own lives. We want to be approachable in that. So in the middle of adversity, we need to be someone that doesn't easily lose their temper, that will listen, right? We are to be quick to listen and slow to speak. And that helps others come to us in the middle of conflict. And so Abigail was very approachable, and the servant came to her saying, listen, David and his men were really good to us. They sent someone to Nabal to ask for a simple meal, and he refused. And now David and his men are coming, and it is going to destroy our household. You do what you think is right. Let's see what Abigail does. All right. So first of all, she is approachable. Verse 18. Then Abigail hurried and took 200 loaves of bread and 2 jugs of wine and 5 sheep already prepared and 5 measures of roasted grain and 100 clusters of raisins and 200 cakes of figs, and loaded them on donkeys. She said to her young men, meaning her servants, go on before me. Behold, I'm coming after you. But she did not tell her husband, Nabal. Now I want to be careful here, because at first glance, we wonder if she's not doing something behind her husband's back. And I want to suggest to you that actually she's done the opposite. And she is taking appropriate action. Remember that the servant said back in 17, evil is being plotted against our master and against the household. This was going to mean that David and his men were not coming to have conversation. They were coming to kill. And we'll see here in a minute, they were going to wipe out everybody. So remember, at this time, women were permitted as ladies of the household to distribute household goods as they saw fit. She wasn't doing anything behind her husband's back. I want to suggest to you that she was actually being a woman that her husband could trust. If you read in Proverbs 31:11, it says, "The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain." She was taking appropriate action for her husband to save his life and for her household. She was not disobeying any directive that he had given her. There is no acknowledgement here that she even knew about the situation except from the servant. So, she is approachable. She is taking appropriate action for the good of her husband and for the good of her household. And now let's see what else she does. Please read with me starting in verse 20. "It came about, as Abigail was riding on her donkey and coming down by the hidden part of the mountain, that behold, David and his men were coming down toward her. So she met them." Now David had said, okay, so we're flashing back a little bit, that this is what David had said to his men that they were going to do. Quote, "Surely in vain I've guarded all that this man has had in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belonged to him, and he has returned me evil for good. May God do so to the enemies of David, and more also, if by morning I leave as much as one male of anyone who belongs to him." They had come to kill. And it was not going to be good. They were going to wipe out. Some scholars believe they were going to wipe out everybody, that not even one male was going to stand. Others believe that this was wiping out of all of the men of Nabal's household. At any rate, there was going to be lots of blood, lots of killing, lots of sorrow. But notice what God has orchestrated here. Just as Abigail is coming around the hidden part of the mountain, who's coming toward her? God would have it just the right time. Abigail and her servants and David and his men just at the right time. God's sovereign intervention. And watch how Abigail responds. So she's approachable. She takes appropriate action. And then she does this. Verse 23. "When Abigail saw David, she hurried and dismounted and fell on her face before David and bowed herself to the ground." There was humility. Oftentimes in conflict and disagreement, we want to what we call save face and be something, pretend that we've done right, pretend that we've got it all together and that no one can ever have anything wrong to lay at our feet, say about us, when simply so much would be resolved if we had more of a humility and humbleness in our actions, our words, and our attitudes. Our children in Bible drill are learning a verse out of Proverbs that says, "A soft answer turns away wrath," right? A soft answer turns away anger, but a harsh word stirs up wrath. And we don't want our lives to be like that. We don't want it to be a description of that. We want to be approachable. We want to take appropriate action. And we want to humble ourselves in time of conflict. This should not be a false humility where we pretend that we're wrong when we really have done right. It's not that. It's just this humility of wanting things, wanting relationships to be well. Okay, so it's not admitting something that we've not done or having a false apology, but it's just wanting things to be right. Okay, so here she is. She has fallen down in front of David, and you're going to see her do something here that is really, really good. Look at verse 24. She fell at his feet and said, "On me alone, my Lord, be the blame. And please let your maidservant speak to you, and listen to the words of your maidservant. Please do not let my Lord pay attention to this worthless man, Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your maidservant, did not see the young men of my Lord whom you sent. Now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, since the Lord has restrained you from shedding blood and from avenging yourself by your own hand, now then, let your enemies and those who seek evil against my Lord be as Nabal." Now this is really interesting because she's doing really 3 things here all at one time. She is acknowledging the authority of 3 people. She's already acknowledged the authority of her husband by desiring to save his life, not going in against any directive that he's given her. She has appropriately taken the action as a leader of the household in distributing goods as she sees fit. That is her right to do. She's not stealing from her husband or doing anything that he's not asked her to do. So she is seeing his authority over her life. And then she is seeing David's authority. You are my Lord. I am your maidservant, because she sees the authority of God over her life and his life. We're going to read here that from verse 24 all the way to verse 31, she calls David Lord 14 times. And she lays out and helps David see God over his life. And she realizes and acknowledges he will be king. So she sees her husband's authority. She sees David's authority as future king of Israel. And she sees God's authority. It is really interesting and serious in our lives that we understand appropriate authority and that we acknowledge that authority in any situation and especially any conflict that we are in. Knowing that authority, willing to give over to that authority, and notice what she says. She takes appropriate responsibility for what she didn't do. Notice here in verse 24. Verse 24, she says, she falls at his feet and says, "On me alone, my Lord, be the blame. And please let your maidservant speak to you and listen to the words of your maidservant. Please do not let my lord pay attention to this worthless man Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your maidservant, did not see the young men of my lord whom you sent. Remember, as an authority in the household, she is acknowledging, I was the one that was supposed to prepare the meal. I'm the one that is supposed to be generous and understanding what needs to be done, and I didn't do it. Now, she does say, I didn't see the men when they came. However, it is important to understand Nabal had been back for some time. She didn't know the situation. You have to wonder if she wasn't feeling some responsibility for communication with her own husband and not knowing that such a big thing just happened. And so she says, it's my fault. I'm the one that's supposed to prepare the meal. I'm the one that's supposed to see to these things, and I simply didn't do it. Please, blame me. In conflict, we have to be willing to take responsibility for even the things that we don't know. Because it's not enough for us to say, well, I didn't know. Sometimes it's our job to know, to be involved enough to know, whether that's with our children or in the lives of our spouses or in the lives of our church. We can't sit back and say, but I didn't know. Be involved enough to know. So let's review quickly. Remember what Abigail is and what she does. First, she is approachable. The servant comes to her. Second, she takes appropriate action. Death was coming if she didn't move quickly and move well. She prepares everything, gets everything ready, and she goes. Thirdly, she is not arrogant. She is humble when she comes face to face with David. Fourthly, she acknowledges authority over her life, from her husband to future king to Lord of all. And she brings herself under that authority. And then fifthly, she accepts responsibility in the conflict. It wasn't enough to say she didn't know. She accepts that responsibility and takes the blame for that. Those are 5 ways that in a conflict we can be an Abigail in the midst of adversity. I hope to share with you the conclusion of this message, but for this week, read through 1 Samuel 25, verses 14 through 25, and next week we'll come back together for the other 4 steps of what Abigail does in the midst of adversity. I love you all. I hope you are well.